backup to reduce DR downtime. I'm Matt Riley, Marketing Program Manager at Datto, and I'm joined by Ian McCord, Director of Product at Datto, and George Crump, Founder and Lead Analyst of Storage Switzerland. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today's presentation. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items to address. First, this presentation is being recorded and will be available later today. I'll be sure to email you once it's available on Datto's website. Also, be on the lookout for some polling questions we'll be sending out to you guys to get your feedback and your usability with business continuity systems. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, be sure to use the question and answer box within your GoToWebinar app. And also, any on-demand viewers that we have, please send us a tweet at Datto Backup or at Storage Swiss. Let's get started. I'd like to pass over to Ian McCord. Take it away, Ian.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And for those of you who are not familiar with me, I am the Director of Product at Datto on the product roadmap, and I spend a lot of time specifically in the technology world. You can see a lot of my blogs on CompTIA as well as Heartland Technology Group and the ASCII Group. And for those of you who are not familiar with Datto, Datto was founded in 2007. We've grown to over 300 employees, and we've been able to leverage a lot of great state and government funds, and been able to really expand in our local community here in the Northeast. We've been committed to support and development for our products. So, when we started as a startup, we weren't looking to, to get out there with a flashy marketing scheme. We were looking to build a good product and put good services around that product. And it's been extremely successful for us. In the last 3 years, we've been rated on the Inc. 500 as one of the fastest growing companies. In terms of size, we've got 100 petabytes in our data centers across the globe. And we are 100% channel only, so we used value-added resellers and managed service providers and solution providers to help deliver our service. We feel that they're a great complement to the solution that we provide. And I'd like to bring in Storage Switzerland and George Crump, who is the founder there. He's a fantastic analyst and advisor for the tech community. George, why don't you give us an introduction to Storage Switzerland?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. Like Ian said, I am the founder of Storage Switzerland. We're an analyst firm focused on storage, cloud, and virtualization. We gain knowledge of these markets through product testing, interaction with end users and suppliers, and then you can find the results of all that research in a variety of formats on our website, including articles, videos, webinars, product analysis, case studies, etc. Email address, the web address is storageswiss.com. Just go there, and all the content will be available to you. As far as myself, if you don't know me, like I said, I am the founder of Storage Switzerland. I have two basic areas of expertise that I tend to focus on a lot. It's performance optimization, and then sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, data protection. So I do a lot of work on that in the form of public speaking, white papers, Chalk Talk videos, things like that. Prior to founding Storage Switzerland, we've been around for 8 years now, actually going into our 9th year. Prior to doing that, though, I was a CTO at a large storage integrator and had hands-on design work, designing both high-performance storage systems and disaster recovery plans for a wide variety of data centers across the United States. So from a polling question standpoint, let's go ahead and kind of push out our first poll and get some feedback from you guys on how you would respond to this particular situation. So it's if your computer room was flooded, how long would you be down? Would you be up in a day? Would you be down for days? Would you be down for a week? Or would you not know how long? So we'll go ahead and let those results come in. And so Ian, we're seeing about 50% or so don't know exactly how long it would take, and about 40% claiming that they'd be up in a day. Any surprises there?
I'd say no surprise on the don't know how long. I think this is one of the things that obviously you wouldn't test a computer room being flooded, but simulating this with completely unplugging a computer room is something that I think users are scared to do, even though they've made several investments in solutions that say that they'll be able to be up and running quickly. It's definitely a good exercise to do. With the large percentage saying they'll be up in a day, I mean, I think that that's fantastic to hear. But then the question is, have you done it? Have you tried it? Or is that just an estimation?
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's go ahead and close out that poll, and we'll kind of move on with kind of our conversation. It's interesting. So if you look at sort of the mid-market IT professional, this guy kind of describes it, not that you guys are all faceless folks, but you're juggling a lot of things, juggling a lot of puzzle pieces at the same time. And what we find is that, especially in the small to medium-sized business, there is no concept of a team. There's the IT guy, and that person tends to not have the ability to focus just on backups. They're running, the storage infrastructure. They're maintaining servers. They're making sure users' laptops are working. They're, basically getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And even if you're an organization large enough to have 3 or 4, maybe 5 people in IT, same problem. You get as you add more people, generally that's happening because the size of the organization is getting bigger, right? So it becomes a challenge almost regardless. The other thing is that the small and medium-sized businesses in particular, the user/owner expectations are higher. In a lot of cases, and this ties into the third bullet there, the owner is very close to the project, if you will. I mean, they're the guy writing the check. They're the guy that owns the business. It's either paying for their kids' college or buying your new cool storage system. So it takes a lot of justification, and it's a lot more of a personal decision. So we find that price consciousness is high in this market just because of the personal nature of the money. And I think the other thing, kind of coming back to the second bullet, is we're clearly seeing that business owners and IT guys in this range are clearly starting to understand that downtime now means losing productivity, losing customers, and then of course that adds up to losing revenue at some level. Most businesses now are entirely electronic or digital based. If they don't have a system, many simply can't run the operation. So the importance of keeping all of these offices and employees online has become increasingly critical. So, in that vein, a lot of small and medium-sized data centers start to look at the cloud as sort of the way out from a data protection standpoint. And so, the phrase I have here is, can the cloud make you a hero? Well, there's a couple of things that, people are hoping to get out of the cloud, and I call it the cloud promise. The first is, can we get just better quality backups? I mean, clearly the cloud has now pretty much proven itself as a reliable place to back up laptops. That's basically widespread now. But can we scale that to servers, right? Because now, we're not talking about, a few files or, sub-terabyte type of capacities. We're talking very, very high capacities. And the other thing is we need to capture data more frequently, because in a laptop, one user's laptop losing maybe a day's worth of backups is not that big of a deal, given the amount of files that most people generally touch in a day. But a server clearly is touching many, many files. In a database, it could be touching many, many records. So getting high quality and frequent backups are critical. And the other thing that we're starting to see people look at is, can the cloud help with migrations from physical to virtual, or from one virtual environment to another virtual environment, those sort of things. So those are some of the promises that we see in the cloud, and so we'll talk about some of those. And then, obviously the other big thing is, how can the cloud help with recoveries? And there's some important things to think about here, right? Because if you look at what we've done in the cloud to optimize it for backup, many of those things don't help in recovery, right? So most cloud solutions that are going after the business, mid-sized business market, are providing features like deduplication, like compression, like change block backup, things like that, Well, all of those count on the baseline being in the cloud and being able to optimize data transfer. Well, in a recovery, if you've lost your entire data center, you can't count on that baseline. It probably doesn't exist. So all that data has to come back. Is that feasible? Is that something that makes sense to do, or is there something else? And that's my kind of my second question there. Can I recover in the cloud? You know, what is, and that's a thing you're going to start hearing a lot of, I think, is the term we hear thrown around is DR as a service, or DRaaS. And so the idea of, instead of you restoring all your data to a brand new data center and waiting for that to happen, you know, and think about all the things that have to happen there. You have to get new servers, you have to pull data across the wire, you've got to make sure that the application is set correctly. All those different things have to happen. And if it does, then, you know, great, but that's going to take time, it's going to take a lot of things. Well, what if we could just start the application directly in the cloud? The provider already has the data, they already have, you know, in theory, they already have systems in place, you know, things like that. But, you know, what we're cautioning people is to really ask a lot of questions of your potential provider and understand exactly what that process looks like. And just to kind of touch on the backup section, you know, when we talk about in the kind of the backup data protection arena, there's a lot of emphasis on recovery, and you'll hear things like, you know, backups, you know, it's not about backup, it's about recovery and things like that. Well, if you can't get a good quality backup, then you can't have a recovery, right? So actually the most important thing, this isn't a chicken and egg thing. If you can't get a quality backup, your recovery isn't happening. So making sure that you have a high quality backup is really critical to the operation. So making sure that the data, first of all, can get transferred, right? So, you know, with a cloud, we're dealing with some sort of a much higher latent connection than a local transfer. And so one of the things we'll suggest there is that you look for hybrid type of solutions that can do things like, you know, essentially cache or capture the initial backup locally, that can do things like maybe do the deduplication and compression initially right on that appliance, things like that. So those things can help with WAN optimization. The other things to look at is sort of kind of the basics, right, of hot application backups and broad platform coverage, making sure you can actually protect all the different systems in your environment. Making sure that you can protect those systems in an online fashion when you need to. So things like that. And I think the part that goes kind of hand in hand with that is ensuring that the place that the backup lands is going to be good for you. So a couple of things there, right? So can we verify the data that's being transferred, right? Can we do some form of data integrity checking to make sure that, you know, what if we send them, you know, 3 ones, that 3 ones arrive, things like that. So make sure you're asking those sort of questions of your potential cloud provider. The next thing is recovery testing. You know, really this is the acid test, right? If you can recover the application, then you know the recovery worked. Can your provider facilitate a way that you can do this very, very quickly, where you can just launch the application, see it's running, everything's great? You know, going further, could we automate that process so that if there's so maybe every night or every other night or some pattern that you set up, that the system, the backup environment automatically creates you know, recovers the application, starts it in its environment, maybe takes a screenshot of it and sends you the screenshot, right? That would sort of like be the ultimate in comfort, knowing that if something went wrong, you'd be able to recover in the cloud. So those are some more of the kind of key features that we talk about. And again, in line with that is, can the backups scale, right? If you can, you probably still want to be able to protect your laptops, but can you also protect physical and virtual environments? You know, those are real, obviously, a lot of people will have a mix of things. You know, it's even in the small to medium-sized business market, it's not uncommon at all for us to see 1 or 2 physical servers and maybe 3 or 4 hosts hosting 10 to 20 virtual machines. So can you hit that variety and cover all those things? And then, like I said earlier, can it help you with migrations, both from physical to virtual and maybe between virtual environments, right? So let's say you started with VMware and maybe for licensing reasons you want to go to a Hyper-V or something else. Is there any way that the backup solution can help you with that? And then, another thing to think about from a better backups perspective is your backup data secure, right? Is it encrypted so that only your company can get to it? That requires obviously that the data is encrypted before it's transferred across the wire. It requires it stays in an encrypted format, and it also requires you understand who owns the keys to make sure that all of that things are protected. Ideally, you want if for some reason somebody is suing you or taking legal action against you and is requesting your data, or if there's a vandalist type of attack, you want to make sure it's your business decision what data you release and when. You may be forced to by law, but you want it to be your business decision. And then the next thing is, let's talk about disasters. There's a lot of different levels of disaster, and I think one of the challenges with our polling question is we maybe weren't very specific, but what type of disaster you need protection from. The short answer is all of them, but let's think about the different type of disasters that exist out there today, right? The simple one is, you lose a file, but the expectation is typically higher when you lose a file. You want that file to come back very, very quickly, things like that. And so that's, it's easy but hard because there's a higher expectation. What about if an application corrupts? I mean, any of the studies that you see nowadays, they blame most application outages on software or users, right? Not on hardware. If the application fails, how quickly can we bring it back up and running, right? So that's, and I think there's a greater pressure to do that now since users are probably interacting with most businesses in an online fashion. There's not there's a higher level of pressure because there's not the locality where the people are right next to you and they know that there's a power outage, right? If you're in New York and somebody's accessing you from California, they don't know if there was a power outage or not. So there's a higher level of expectation there. And then kind of going up the stack, okay, what if the whole server fails? Well, now we got a complete physical outage. How do we get that back up and running very quickly? Can we use the appliance that we talked about earlier that's receiving backups to host? Can we host in the cloud? Things like that we've kind of discussed. And then, the final thing is what I describe as the inaccessible building. To me, that's the safest thing to plan for because nobody can really guess what disaster is going to hit them. And so planning for, just you've lost the building for whatever reason is important. And one of the things that I'll point out here is, and it kind of ties into the second point, and it's a common mistake that we see people make, is the secondary location is way too close to the primary location. I was just talking to a medium-sized medium-sized business IT manager today, and their DR site was less than 40 miles away. It was clearly on the same power grid. It was clearly within the same floodplain. I mean, all the things we don't like to see happen, it was happening, right? So that's a real challenge. And so one of the things we always talk about is you've got to get distance. Distance is your friend when we're talking about disaster recovery. And the latency aspect that used to keep people from going after distance has really been handled by things like the DR as a service. So, if you look at how these are different, really everything short of the site disaster, at least initially, should be recovered from that kind of local appliance, right? We don't have to deal with the cloud and transfers and all the different things we have to roll. So that's a real important aspect to have. So the abilities of that box and the software itself, a lot of times people hear cloud and they hit a big check mark. Well, there's still software that drives this whole process, so make sure you know what the software can do for you. And then in a site failure, like I said, the cloud can really play a key role. And so let's kind of talk about what can go on there. You know, like I said before, you can't, if you lose your site, you can't squeeze all your servers down an internet connection in a single moment. And in the past, this was a key limiter for cloud backup for servers, because the recovery in the event of a disaster was very problematic. And so we saw a lot of interesting stuff, right? We saw preloading of servers, and they'd, you know, ship you a server on a plane. We saw creating tape copies or hard drive copies and putting those in a box and shipping them to you. But you know, you can see right there, all of those solutions required data transfer, right, locally, meaning that they had to copy, the cloud provider had to make a copy from their backup to some sort of local thing, be it a server, tape, or hard drives, and then they had to put it in something and ship it to you, be it a plane, a FedEx box, or whatever. All of that took time, right? And so there's no way that you'd be able to hit your we'd be up in a day thing if you have any of those variables. So the next step was enter disaster recovery as a service, right? And I kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's really the ability to run your entire business in the cloud backup provider's data center, right? So that's a real key feature, and so let's talk about that, because my fear with DRaaS is that people are just, it sounds so great, they just kind of believe everything that they hear about it, and we want people to ask harder questions.